This is the Garmin Edge 830. It's one of Garmin's flagship cycling computers, and it sits atop its 800 series range. Now, I spent a lot of time cycling with this computer and I rate it really highly, and I'm going to tell you why in this review. So we'll open up the box and see what you get when you buy one of these. So you get your head unit like this, which is a typical Garmin design, looks very similar to a lot of their other cycling computers. You get the plastic Garmin out front mount, which attaches to your handlebars, which makes it a lot easier to read when you're cycling along. And you get loads of assorted rubber things. So you get rubber stem mounts like this, so you can mount it on your stem if you don't want to use the out front mount, or if you use aero bars and you can't mount it using the standard mount and you haven't yet got an adapter for it. And you also get lots and lots of rubber bands because you lose them all the time, or I certainly do anyway. And then you also have a little strap attacher, so you can attach it to the out front mount and to your handlebars, so when you hit a pothole you don't lose your cycling computer. It's quite useful. And you also get your instruction booklets as well as a guide to setting it up, plus some individual Allen keys to do the screws on your mounts. So you get everything that you need in this box. This particular model, the Edge 830, which is sold on its own as I have it here, costs £349. So you can pay extra, which gets you a performance bundle, as Garmin calls it, and that comes with speed sensors and a cadence sensor in the box. But I've been testing the unit on its own without any of those add-ons, and that costs £349. So for a little bit of comparison, the new-ish Wahoo Element Roam costs £300, so it's about £49 extra for this rather than the Wahoo. So I'm going to talk about the device's design and style, and I would describe it as being a sort of distinctively Garmin design, in that it looks a lot like the Garmin Edge 530, which is the flagship computer on their 500 series range. Really, they're identical, except the 530 has some additional buttons on the side of it because it uses buttons rather than a touchscreen. But on the whole, it's a really nice design. It looks very sleek when you put it out the front of your bike. It's a very attractive looking computer. And most importantly, it has a really good screen. So it has quite a big bezel around it, as you can see, but that's not really that big a deal because the screen is really crisp and clean, which is superb for me because I prefer to stick all of my information on one page, because I find if I have to swipe across to look at it, I never do, so I just forget it's there. So I lump everything onto one page, but because the screen's so easy to read, it's very easy to pick out the numbers that you want to see, which is especially good when you're riding along because you don't want to be looking down at your computer for too long. So in its design, it has a 2.6-inch display, which is how big the screen is, and it weighs 80 grams, which is sort of 10 grams, 13 grams less than the Wahoo Element Roam, according to Wahoo's listed weight on its website. So it's not too much to be sticking on the front of your handlebars. So screen's great, I love it. There are a couple of things that I don't like about this design that are gripes that I've had with other Garmin computers and are still ongoing. The first is that the buttons are still on the bumper on the bottom rather than on the top, which is for the most part fine, but when it's on the out front mount so I've been using this on a Canyon Ultimate recently, which I have a special out front mount because it doesn't fit the aero bars. It sits very close to the handlebars and it can be quite difficult to get your finger in to kind of hit the buttons. So it's a minor gripe, but it is a little bit of a frustration, and it would be nice for when you're riding along if you didn't have to sort of struggle to get your finger in to kind of press it to start it or to stop it, or if you want to do laps, it can be quite tough to do that. And one other big thing that you'll notice if you use your Garmin computer to create your route, if you use it for navigation, is it can find the route a lot quicker because it uses a larger processor. And I have found that to be quite noticeable on this when I upload a course and press to start the course. On my old Edge 820, it took quite a long time for it to calculate the whole route and then to route me to the start of the course if I wasn't exactly where I was meant to be. Whereas the Edge 830 does it a whole lot quicker, which is just a really nice thing that speeds up the start of your ride and equals less faff. So what's the Garmin Edge 830 like to set up? Well, it's kind of typical of a lot of Garmin devices, and it's not the easiest to get right, and it's certainly not a particularly quick process. I wouldn't say Garmin's setting up process is nearly as good as Wahoo's, which is something I've praised a lot in the past, because that just involves pairing it to your phone, and then you can update it in real time using the app, which makes it a lot quicker because their app has the sort of phone functionality that you're used to using when you just use other apps on your handset. So you'll need to pair it to Garmin Connect, which is potentially one of my least favorite activities because Garmin Connect isn't a very good app. It's a bit of a minefield when it comes to using it properly, but it is sort of essential when you want to get the computer set up correctly. And from that, you pop in your height and your weight, and it works out all of the important details that it uses to calculate your fitness information, which is what this computer does quite well, but I'll come on to that later on. What's really good about the Edge 830, especially compared to previous Garmin computers, is that the touchscreen is absolutely superb, which makes setting it up a lot easier than it has been in the past. So you would just press it and hold it like that, and then press it again, and you've popped through to all the data field selection area, and you just pick them, and it will update them nice and quick. And now that's really important because I find that I usually need to spend sort of half an hour to an hour with a new computer to get it set up to work how I want it to feel and to like work, and how it makes it easier to use on the bike. And this is a really nice, neat touch because it just means I can go out for a spin, and if I feel like something's out of place or wrong, I can just press it and then change it straight away, and that's a nice and easy solution to that problem. And significantly, for the first time on the Garmin Edge 830, I prefer using the touchscreen than the buttons on, say, the Garmin Edge 530 to set up the device. And that is a testament to how much improved the screen is on this device. One of the first things I noticed with the 830 when I started riding was how quickly it can pick up GPS location, especially in comparison to some of Garmin's other devices, which I'd been using previously. This picks up GPS really quickly and very easily, whereas the Garmin Edge 130, which I've been using before, did not. Sometimes it would take about 1 kilometre for the 130 to pick up GPS signal, whereas this would do it straight away as soon as I was out of the door. It also uses loads of different GPS signals. So it uses standard GPS, it uses GPS GLONASS, GPS Galileo. Each of those has sort of varying signal strengths. So if you ride in really built up areas, GPS Galileo is going to provide you with a better, more accurate signal than GPS would on its own. That's also really useful if you tend to ride in forests or if you're going out into the wilderness. That's a really good way to make sure that you have a very accurate signal, although it does affect your battery life a lot more. It's also the same with cadence and speed and heart rate sensors, as well as power meters. It picks them up all really quickly using ANT Plus or Bluetooth. So I know I've spoken about the touchscreen on this quite a lot, but that is because it is so much better than what it has been before. And it is honestly what makes the device so good. So when I'm riding along on the previous computers, it would be very difficult to change screens, and it would become quite frustrating, especially when you're in traffic and you need to focus on what's going on around you. With this, there's no such problem. It swipes across really easily, and it's very quick to do so. Even in gloves, I have gloves with little fingertips, so you can use mobile phones a lot more easily, and it works really well on this screen. One of the first reasons I bought my first ever cycling computer was because I moved to a new area and had no idea where to ride, no idea how long my routes could be or how easy it would be to get home. So I bought a cycling computer to help me navigate when I was out riding my bike. And to this day, mapping on a cycling computer remains one of the most important features. The navigation is clear and succinct. When you're coming up to a big junction or somewhere you need to turn, it will pop up no matter what screen you're on. The map will pop up with a big thing saying turn left or turn right, and it will say the street name, and it's really obvious where you're meant to go. If you're following a course, it will be laid up on the screen just on the road, so it's easy to see where you have to go. The only time it struggles with on-the-fly navigation is when you do a loop where you go out and then you come back on yourself on the same road. That can confuse it a little bit, and it struggles to display when you need to turn because it doesn't know if you're coming or you're going on the route, and it finds that quite difficult. So you'll have to keep an eye on the map if your routes do that at any point. But that's really the only time I struggled with the navigation was the Edge 830, and the rest of the time it's just been really useful. One of the things Garmin has been doing with its flagship cycling computers is turning them into really powerful training tools. And the 830 is no different. So one of the big things that the Edge 830 now does is it has training status, which is some software that Garmin have created to show you your numbers when you finish a ride and you save your activity. And it presents you lots of nice charts and graphs and things that would be really, really great if you were into training. It can show you an awfully large amount. It's telling me to recover, which is quite entertaining because I've only ridden 25 kilometers this week, which is probably a testament to currently how unfit I am. So it can show you your training load over 7 days. So if you're well rested and you can increase your training, or as if you should dial your mileage back a bit because you're in the red and it's showing you to be quite fatigued. It can show you how long your recovery should be, your FTP. It can measure a stress score. You can put in your training zones. It's got a power curve. Now, obviously, this all builds over time, so it's sort of the better the computer gets to know you, the more it sort of learns about your riding. If you hop between computers, it's not going to have a particularly great picture of you as a rider, but if you ride with it consistently, then it can build up a pretty accurate image of what your riding's like, and that's quite important if you want to use it as a training tool. So finally, before I wrap up this review, I'll briefly mention the battery life on the Edge 830, which is very impressive considering all of the different things it does. So we did a recent video shoot in the South Downs, riding the South Downs Way, where I used this as a navigational tool. I was using GPS Galileo, which is one of the more powerful GPS signals. I had a route running from Komoot, which I had plotted, and that was integrated on the computer, so it was following that. I also had my heart rate paired, and I had it connected via Bluetooth to my phone. We rode for 80 kilometers on the first day, and it was a video shoot, so we were out for about sort of 10, 12 hours, and it only used 50% battery, which I think is really impressive, especially considering it's a touchscreen as well, which uses additional battery life when you're flicking around on the screens because it always has to be responsive. So it's a really impressive battery life on this. So that's my review of Garmin's Edge 830 computer. It's a very good development on the models previously in the 800 series with a far improved touchscreen, which makes it an absolute joy to use when you're out on the bike. It also has decent battery life, great mapping, and really good software. So it's really everything that you could need in a package for a cycling computer. At £349, it is quite expensive, but if you really want to push your performance, or if you want to ride in the middle of nowhere and you need good mapping and decent battery life, then this is a really good option for you. If you have any comments or any questions you'd like to know about this device, then please do leave them in the comments section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Cycling Weekly YouTube channel and keep your eyes peeled for more great content coming in the future.